Okay, today I'd like to do a video that's a little bit different than what I've done in the past, but still a little connected, I think. And to start, I just had something cool I wanted to show you guys. I was looking in the library of my parents' home for the holidays, and I found some of the oldest copies of The Lord of the Rings that I've ever seen. I've got the whole collection here, and just to show you, they're really cool. Here's the Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm gonna be careful. I don't want to harm it, but they've got colored, hopefully you can see, colored map of Middle-earth, and in the back they have a zoomed-in map as well. And it's all topological, and it shows the mountains and everything. It's really cool. It seems pretty fragile at this point, but it smells like a grandparent's library or something. It was a cool find that I thought you might like to see. They've got the cool logo here. With the ring and the old text, Elvish or Mordor language. And then the main part of the video that I was interested in today was I have a couple of my favorite books here, and I thought I would read some of my favorite passages from them. So I have 3 books and 3 passages to read. The first, I thought it would be nice to look into The Hobbit. It's similar to what we have been reading in The Fellowship of the Ring, but I found the Riddles in the Dark chapter in The Hobbit was always one of my favorites. There's Bilbo is in the Misty Mountains and talking to Gollum, and manages to get away with riddles. And what I thought was interesting was, as a kid, the riddles all made sense and were fun and all of that, but as I got older, I took a class, and each of the riddles means something. So you can go back and look, and most of Bilbo's riddles seem very optimistic and focused on home or food or various comforts. And Gollum's are more dark and set in the mountains and that sort of thing. So I thought I'd read that really quick and talk about it. So, in Riddles in the Dark, I am Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I have lost the dwarves, and I have lost the wizard, and I don't know where I am, and I don't want to know. If only I can get away. What's he got in his hands is, said Gollum, looking at the sword, which he did not quite like. A sword, a blade which came out of Gondolin, said Gollum, and became quite polite. Perhaps we sit here and chats with it a bit, see my precious. It likes riddles, perhaps it does it? He was anxious to appear friendly, at any rate, for the moment, and until he found out more about the sword and the Hobbit, whether he was quite alone really, whether he was good to eat. and whether Gollum was really hungry. Riddles were all he could think of. Asking them, and sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he had ever played with the other funny creatures sitting in their holes in the long, long ago, before he lost all his friends and was driven away, alone, and crept down into the dark under the mountains. Very well, said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether he was a friend of the goblins. You ask first, he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle. So Gollum hissed. What has roots as nobody sees, is taller than trees, up it goes, and yet never grows. Easy, said Bilbo. Mountain, I suppose. Does it get easy? It must have a competition with us. My precious. If Precious asks, and it doesn't answer, we eats it, my precious. If it asks us, and we doesn't answer, then we does what it wants, eh? We shows it the way out. Yes. All right, said Bilbo, not daring to disagree, and nearly bursting his brain to think of riddles that could save him from being eaten. 30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still. That was all he could think to ask. The idea of being eaten was rather on his mind. It was a rather old one, too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. Chestnuts, chestnuts, he hissed. Teeth, teeth, my precious, for we has only 6. Then he asked his second. Voiceless it cries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mouthless mutters. Half a moment, cried Bilbo, who was thinking uncomfortably about eating. Fortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before, and getting his wits back, he thought of the answer. Wind, wind, of course, he said, and while he was so pleased that he made one up on the spot, this'll puzzle the nasty little underground creature, he thought. An eye in a blue face saw an eye in a green face. That eye is like to this eye, said the first eye, but in low place, not in high place. Said Gollum. He had been underground a long, long time, and was forgetting this sort of thing. But just as Bilbo was beginning to hope that the wretch would not be able to answer, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages and ages before, when he lived with his grandmother in a hole in the bank by a river. My precious, he said, sun on the daisies, it means, it does. But these ordinary above-ground, everyday sort of riddles were tiring for him. Also, they reminded him of days when he had been less lonely and sneaky and nasty, and that put him out of temper. What is more, they made him hungry, so this time he tried something a bit more difficult and unpleasant. It cannot be seen, cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be smelt. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first and follows after, ends life and kills laughter. Unfortunately for Gollum, Bilbo had heard that sort of thing before, and the answer was all around him anyway. Dark, he said, without even scratching his head or putting on his thinking cap. A box without hinges, key or lid, yet golden treasure inside is hid. He asked to gain time until he could think of a really hard one. This, he thought, a dreadfully easy chestnut, though he had not asked it in the usual words, but had proved a nasty poser for Gollum. he hissed to himself, and still he did not answer. He whispered and spluttered. After some while, Bilbo became impatient. "Well, what is it?" he asked. "The answer's not a kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noise you're making. Give us a chance. Let it give us a chance, my precious." "Well," said Bilbo, after giving him a long chance, "what about your guess?" But suddenly Gollum remembered thieving from nests long ago, and sitting under the river bank, teaching his grandmother to suck. "Eggs!" he hissed. "Eggs it is." Then he asked, "Alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, never drinking, all in mail and never clinking." He also, in his turn, thought this was a dreadfully easy one, because he was always thinking of the answer. But he could not remember anything better at the moment. He was so flustered by the egg question. All the same, it was a poser for poor Bilbo, who had never had anything to do with water if he could help it. I imagine you know the answer, of course, or can guess it as easy as winking. Since you are sitting comfortably at home and have not the danger of being eaten to disturb your thinking. Bilbo sat and cleared his throat once or twice, but no answer came. After a while, Gollum began to hiss with pleasure to himself. "Is it nice, my precious? Is it juicy? Is it scrumptiously crunchable?" He began to peer at Bilbo out of the darkness. "Half a moment," said the Hobbit, shivering. "I gave you a long chance just now." "It must make haste, said Gollum, beginning to climb out of his boat onto the shore to get at Bilbo. But when he put his long, webby foot in the water, a fish jumped out in a fright and fell on Bilbo's toes. "Ugh, it's cold and clammy." And so he guessed. "Fish, fish," he cried. It is fish." Gollum was dreadfully disappointed, but Bilbo asked another riddle as quick as ever he could, so that Gollum had to get back into his boat and think. No legs lay on one leg. 2 legs sat near on 3 legs. 4 legs got some. It was not really the right time for this riddle, but Bilbo was in a hurry. Gollum might have had some trouble guessing it if he had asked it at another time. As it was, talking of fish, no legs was not very difficult, and after that the rest was easy. Fish on a little table, man at table, sitting on a stool. The cat has bones. That, of course, is the answer. And Gollum soon gave it. Then he thought the time had come to ask something hard and horrible. This is what he said. "This thing all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, and flowers, gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays king, ruins town, and beats the high mountains down." Poor Bilbo sat in the dark, thinking of all the horrible names of all the giants and ogres he had ever heard of told in the tales. But not one of them had done all those things. He had a feeling that the answer was quite different, and that he ought to know it, but he couldn't think of it. He began to get frightened, and that is bad for thinking. Gollum began to get out of his boat. He flapped into the water and paddled to the bank. Bilbo could see his eyes coming towards him. His tongue seemed to stick in his mouth. He wanted to shout out, "Give me more time, give me time," but all that came out with a sudden squeal was time. Bilbo was saved by pure luck, for that, of course, was the answer. Gollum was so disappointed once more, and now he was getting angry and also tired of the game. It had made him very hungry indeed. This time, he did not go back to the boat. He sat down in the dark by Bilbo, and that made the Hobbit most dreadfully uncomfortable, and scattered his wits. It's got to ask us a question, my precious. Yes. Just one more question to guess. Yes, said Gollum. But Bilbo simply could not think of any question with that nasty, wet, cold thing sitting next to him and pawing and poking him. He scratched himself, he pinched himself, and still he could not think of anything. Ask us, said Gollum. Bilbo pinched himself and slapped himself. He gripped on his little sword. He even felt in his pocket with his other hand. Then he found the ring that he had picked up in the passage and forgotten about. What have I got in my pocket? He thought out loud. He was talking to himself, but Gollum thought it was a riddle, and he was frightfully upset. Not fair, he hissed. It isn't fair, my precious, is it, to ask us what it's got in its nasty little pockets? Bilbo, seeing what had happened, and having nothing better to ask, stuck to his question. What have I got in my pocket? He said louder. Hissed Gollum. It must give us 3 guesses, my precious, 3 guesses. Very well, guess away, said Bilbo. Handses, said Gollum. Wrong, said Bilbo, who had luckily just taken his hand out again. Guess again, said Gollum, more upset than ever. He thought of all the things he kept in his own pockets. Fish bones, goblins' teeth, wet shells, a bit of bat wing, a sharp stone to sharpen his fangs on, and other nasty things. He tried to think what other people kept in their pockets. Knife, he said at last. Wrong, said Bilbo, who had lost his some time ago. Last guess. Now Gollum was in a much worse state than when Bilbo had asked him the egg question. He hissed and spluttered and rocked himself backwards and forwards, and slapped his feet on the floor and wriggled and squirmed. But still he did not dare to waste his last guess. Come on, said Bilbo, I am waiting. He tried to sound bold and cheerful, but he did not feel at all sure how the game was going to end, whether Gollum guessed right or not. Time's up, he said. String or nothing, shrieked Gollum, which was not quite fair, working in both guesses at once. Both wrong, cried Bilbo, very much relieved, and he jumped at once to his feet, put his back to the nearest wall, and held out his nearest sword. Held out his little sword. Anyway, I really like that passage because it's such a child-friendly Tolkien. It feels just as a part of Tolkien's Middle-earth, but it works in just the lightheartedness of good versus evil, because instead of fighting it out or any sort of army versus army battle like in the others, it comes down to wits and luck a lot of the time. So I really enjoy that one, and it's interesting to go into what you think each of the riddles means. I remember my teacher put a lot of emphasis on the riddle about time, and how pessimistic that was, how important it was that riddle came from Gollum. But to me, it's a very sing-songy type of passage. That's just fun to read, and it's fun to read out loud, and it's certainly iconic. I remember watching the new Hobbit movie, and that scene was, I think it was done fairly well. I don't think they had every riddle, but it was good and fun if a little CGI filled. But we don't need to get into that. I guess next I am choosing between two. I think I'll go with Kurt Vonnegut to have a fairly drastic change in tone. The book I picked out is Slaughterhouse Five. I have a whole collection of Kurt Vonnegut books, actually. He's definitely my favorite science fiction writer, and he's one of my favorite writers of all time. His simplistic style was one that I liked, and the other thing that I really liked about Kurt Vonnegut was that he writes about, about very depressing sort of topics. You look at like chapter summaries and stuff online, and it seems like a very bleak sort of a writing where you know, if you've ever read Cat's Cradle, at the end the world ends, and it's and like essentially like all the main characters die, and it's not really an ending that you would want out of a Hollywood movie or something like that. But the way it's written, you just, or at least I can't stop laughing while I read it. So it was funny. I remember I never really like stepped back from how much I enjoyed the writing style and the satire to look at that until I was talking to one of my friends who also is a big reader, and he told me, like, how do you do that? How do you read Kurt Vonnegut and you know, have this really nice time reading and not getting depressed? And I was like, I'm never close to depressed reading Kurt Vonnegut. It's just funny writing. So anyway, all this to say, the passage I've picked out, I think, like, is a good representation of that. It's about 2/3 of the way into the book, I'd say, and it is the death of the main character. But it's written in a way that I feel is beautiful, but also thought-provoking. And if you haven't read the story before, the main character is named Billy Pilgrim, and he gets this power from aliens to live back and forth throughout his life. I'd compare it to Dr. Manhattan, how he is kind of unstuck in time. I think Kurt Vonnegut actually used the term unstuck. So, this happens in Chapter 6. Billy Pilgrim says now that this really is the way he is going to die, too. As a time traveler, he has seen his own death many times, has described it to a tape recorder. The tape is locked up with his will and some other valuables in his safe deposit box at the Alien Merchants National Bank and Trust, he says. I, Billy Pilgrim, the tape begins, will die, have died, and always will die, February 13th, 1976. At the time of his death, he says, he is in Chicago to address a large crowd on the subject of flying saucers and the true nature of time. His home is still in Ilium. He has had to cross 3 international boundaries in order to reach Chicago. The United States of America has been balkanized, has been divided into 20 petty nations so that it will never again be a threat to world peace. Chicago has been hydrogen bombed by angry Chinamen. So it goes. It is all brand new. Billy is speaking before a capacity audience in a baseball park, which is covered by a geodesic dome. The flag of the country is behind him. It is a Hereford bow on a field of green. Billy predicts his own death within an hour. He laughs about it and invites the crowd to laugh with him. It is high time I was dead, he says. Many years ago, he said, a certain man promised to have me killed. He is an old man now, living not far from here. He has read all the publicity associated with my appearance in your fair city. He is insane. Tonight, he will keep his promise. There are protests from the crowd. Billy Pilgrim rebukes them. If you protest, if you think that death is a terrible thing, then you have not understood a word that I've said. Now he closes his speech as he closes every speech, with these 3 words. With these words. Farewell, hello. Farewell, hello. There are police around him as he leaves the stage. They are there to protect him from the crush of popularity. No threats on his life have been made since 1945. The police offer to stay with him. They are floridly willing to stand in a circle around him all night with their zap guns drawn. No, no, says Billy serenely. It is time for you to go home to your wives and children. And it is time for me to be dead for a little while, and then live again. At that moment, Billy's high forehead is in the crosshairs of a high-powered laser gun. It is aimed at him from the darkened press box. In the next moment, Billy Pilgrim is dead. So it goes. So, Billy experiences death for a while. It is simply violet light and a hum. There isn't anybody else there. Not even Billy Pilgrim is there. And then he swings back into life again, all the way back to an hour after his life was threatened by Lazaro in 1945. He has been told to get out of his hospital bed and dress, that he is well. He and Lazaro and poor Edgar Derby are to join their fellows in the theater. There they will choose a leader for themselves, by a secret ballot in a free election. And I guess the reason I like that passage so much is I just like that image, this, I'll be dead for a while, and then I'll go back to some other part in my life. And it's a really cool idea that you could go through and live your life, the ups and the downs, and just sort of tour the experiences. guess it makes you want to make some good ones to be able to come back to one day. And it also uses the phrase "so it goes," which is throughout the entire book, of course. But I just like it. It trivializes death, but the whole book is sort of it's an anti-war novel. So in the way that it trivializes death, I am not really smart enough to talk about it. I'm sure I could write an essay if I did some more research, but this is just off the cuff. I just think that it makes you think about death in a way that you wouldn't if he didn't say "so it goes." In another part of the book, he says the wine is dead, and says "so it goes" afterwards. And I always sort of liked that, as kind of subverting his own book's sort of style. But I always enjoy a little bit of Kurt Vonnegut. The next book, the final passage that I'm going to read today, because I am getting on 30 minutes, and I was hoping this would be a shorter video, is from The Last Battle. It's the Chronicles of Narnia, and I really like this cover. If I can bring it closer to the camera, it's got the unicorn and the door into the true Narnia, or heaven, or whatever you would look at it as. And the passage I picked out is right near the very end, where, if you haven't read the book, the bad guys are the Calormenes, and they're sort of Eastern-y. You can argue it's an allegory. I don't think so, but they are certainly Eastern in style, and they have worshipped a different god called Tash, and who's different from Aslan, the lion. They've all been judged or whatever, and been through the door into the true Narnia, and they come upon one of these Calormenes, and he tells them about the Calormene, tells the whole group of children about his encounter with Aslan, how he got to be where he is, and I just think it's beautiful and well written. So, this is the very beginning of chapter 15, called Further Up and Further In. The Calormene's name is Emeth. I didn't introduce him. "Know, O warlike kings," said Emeth, "and you, O ladies whose beauty illuminates the universe, that I am Emeth, the seventh son of Harpa Tarkan, of the city of Tehishba, westward beyond the desert. I came lately into Narnia with 29 others, under the command of Rishta Tarkan. Now, when I first heard that we should march upon Narnia, I rejoiced, for I had heard many things of your land, and desired greatly to meet you in battle. But when I found that we were to go in disguised as merchants, which is a shameful dress for a warrior and the son of a Tarkan, and to work by lies and trickery, then my joy departed from me. And most of all, when I found we must wait upon a monkey, and when it began to be said that Tash and Aslan were one, then the world became dark in my eyes. For always since I was a boy I have served Tash, and my great desire was to know more of him, if it might be, and if it were might. Let me take that again. For always since I was a boy I have served Tash, and my great desire was to know more of him, if it might be, to look upon his face. But the name of Aslan was hateful to me. And as you have seen, we were called together outside the straw-roofed hovel, night after night, and then the fire was kindled, and the eight brought forth out the hovel something upon 4 legs that I could not well see. And the people and the beasts bowed down and did honor to it. But I thought, the dark N is deceived by the ape, for this thing that comes out of the stable is neither Tash nor any other god. But when I watched the Tarkan's face, and marked every word that he said to the monkey, then I changed my mind, for I saw that the Tarkan did not believe in it himself. And then I understood that he did not believe in Tash at all. For if he had, how could he dare to mock him? When I understood this, a great rage fell upon me, and I wondered that the true Tash did not strike down both the monkey and the Tarkan with fire from heaven. Nevertheless, I hid my anger and held my tongue and waited to see how it would end. But last night, as some of you know, the monkey brought forth not the yellow thing, but said that all who desired to look upon Tashland, for so they mixed the 2 words to pretend that they were one, must pass one by one into the hall. And I said to myself, doubtless this is some other deception. But when the cat had followed in and had come out again in a madness of terror, then I said to myself, surely the true Tash, whom they called on without knowledge or belief, has now come among us, and will avenge himself. And though my heart was turned into water inside me because of the greatness and terror of Tash, yet my desire was stronger than my fear, and I put force upon my knees to stay them from trembling, and on my teeth that they would not chatter, and resolved to look upon the face of Tash, though he should slay me. So I offered myself to go into the hovel, and the Tarkan, though unwillingly, let me go. As soon as I had gone in at the door, the first wonder was that I found myself in this great sunlight, as we all are now, though in the inside of the hovel had looked dark from the outside. But I had no time to marvel at this, for immediately I was forced to fight for my head against one of our own men. As soon as I saw him, I understood that the monkey and the Tarkan had set him there to slay any who came in, if he were not in their secrets, so that this man also was a liar and a mocker and no true servant of Tash. I had the better will to fight him, and having slain the villain, I cast him out behind me through the door. And then I looked about me and saw the sky and the wide lands and smelled the sweetness, and I said, by the gods, this is a pleasant place. It may be that I am come into the country of Tash. And I began to journey into the strange country and to seek him. So I went over much grass and many flowers, and among all kinds of wholesome and delectable trees, till lo, in a narrow place between 2 rocks, there came to meet me a great lion. The speed of him was like the ostrich, and his size was an elephant's. His hair was like pure gold, and the brightness of his eyes like gold is that is liquid in the furnace. He was more terrible than the flaming mountain of Lugur, and in beauty he surpassed all that is in the world. even as the rose in bloom surpasses the dust of the desert. Then I fell at his feet, and I thought, surely this is the hour of death. For the lion, who is worthy of all honor, will know that I have served Tash all my days, and not him. Nevertheless, it is better to see the lion and to die than to be Tisroc of the world and live and not to have seen it. But the glorious one bent down his golden head and touched my forehead with his tongue and said, Son, thou art welcome. But I said, Alas, Lord, I am no son of thine, but the servant of Tash. He answered, Child, all the service thou hast done to Tash, I account as service done to me. Then by reasons of my great desire for wisdom and understanding, I overcame my fear and questioned the glorious one, and said, Lord, is it then true, as the ape said, that thou and Tash are one? The lion growled, and so that the earth shook, but his wrath was not against me, and said, It is false, not because he and I are one, but because we are opposites. I take to me the services which thou hast done to him. For I and he are of such different kinds, that no service which is vile can be done unto me, and none which is not vile can be done unto him. Therefore, if any man swear by Tash, and keep his oath for the oath's sake, it is by me that he is truly sworn, though he know it not, and it is I who reward him. And if any man do cruelty in my name, then, though he says the name as that, it is Tash whom he serves, and by Tash his deed is accepted. Dost thou understand, child? I said, Lord, thou knowest how much I understand, but I also, for the truth constrained me. But I said also, for the truth constrained me. Yet I have been seeking Tash all my days. Beloved, said the glorious one, unless thy desire had been for me, thou wouldst not have sought so long and so truly. For all find what they truly seek. Then he breathed upon me and took away the trembling from my limbs and caused me to stand upon my feet. And after that, he said not much, but that we should meet again, and I must go further up and further in. Then he turned him about in a storm and a flurry of gold, and was gone suddenly. And since then, O kings and ladies, I have been wandering to find him, and my happiness is so great that it even weakens me like a wound. And this is the marvel of marvels, that he called me beloved. Me, who am but as a dog. What's that? Said one of the dogs. Sir, said Emma, it is but a fashion of speech, which we have in Calumet. Well, I can't say it's one I like very much, said the dog. So, that pretty much gets the gist of it. And many people might not like C.S. Lewis as much. He can come off as a bit preachy, and so I'm not going to spend too much time delving into that quote, and I may put a link to skip that part if people want. But I really like it, and I think it's sort of been an example of why people should be perhaps a little bit more open-minded, maybe is a good word, than they are. But again, I won't go too far into it. but this is my first video with my face on it the whole time, so let me know how you enjoyed that, and if you liked the change, because I certainly have a large book collection and I can continue to read excerpts that I like. I don't think I'm going to stop reading The Lord of the Rings, and I hopefully will have Chapter 4 out before Christmas, if that's why you subscribed and that's what you're looking for. But I was beginning to get a little less response, and I wanted to show some new ideas, especially since I just passed 100 subscribers, so I thought it would be a good time to try something new. So let me know in the comments section, or by liking the video if you enjoyed it or didn't. You can dislike as well, I suppose. And you know, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was relaxing and interesting. And I almost forgot. One fairly important announcement is I have gotten a GoPro, and I'm figuring out how to use it. And I'm hoping to get a microphone that is a bit more high quality. I've just been using my webcam for these past 4 videos, so the quality of my videos is about to go up quite a bit. I'm sorry, I keep looking over here, but that's where my laptop is, so it's hard to stop. But anyway, the quality of my videos is about to go up significantly, and so I hope you stick around or subscribe if you haven't already, and look forward to newer and better videos. So, thank you.